Hey everybody, it's Cauliflower Man here. I'm bringing you another video for cryptocurrencies today, and today we're going to focus on scaling the Bitcoin Cash network. Now, I'm not a programmer, so I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time talking about this. I can't actually make this occur. This is just a thought I had, and it wouldn't be the easiest thing to do. Okay, so they've been trying to come out with Bitcoin Lightning for like 3-4 years now. So I don't know how long it would take to create this sort of scaling network for Bitcoin Cash. I call it Bitcoin Thunder. And just so you know, there's been people who have talked about similar ideas to Bitcoin Thunder. Nobody's really used the name. I like the name, and I'll tell you why I like the name once we get down there to it. But the reason why I was thinking about the scaling of Bitcoin Cash was because Bitcoin Lightning, it's great. It'll definitely totally, it'll increase the price, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Sorry, it'll increase the price of Bitcoin incredibly. But the problem with this is that it removes the blockchain auditability. So you're doing a lot of the transactions off the blockchain. So the whole point of the blockchain was that you could check it and make sure nothing was going wrong with Bitcoin. Well, if you're using the Bitcoin Lightning Network, all those transactions are off the blockchain. How do you know nothing's going wrong and you don't, And it's really inconvenient, and beyond it being inconvenient, because if you've ever used Bitcoin, and especially if you were new, if you had made a mistake when you were new, I know of a lot of people who have sent Bitcoins to a wallet they created, but their Bitcoin client wasn't synced up when they sent the Bitcoin to that wallet, so they'll freak out about it, and they'll, ask questions on Bitcoin Talk or other forums and stuff, and they'll freak out, and then people will just be like, check your address on the blockchain, the money's probably there. If the money's there, then you don't have anything to worry about. It's just, you got to sync up your blockchain or whatever. And so then, you could really help people out by just using the information that the blockchain gave you. But if you use the Bitcoin Lightning Network, that blockchain doesn't exist. So it's really going to, Bitcoin Lightning, don't get me wrong, it's a great thing for the Bitcoin economy and ecosystem, but God, does it have some things that suck. So that's the whole reason that Bitcoin Cash was created, and it cannot use Lightning. But the question is if it doesn't use Lightning and they increase the block size to 8 megabytes, how is it going to scale without having unbelievable blockchain bloat? That's the big question. So if you want to answer that question, you have to ask a couple more questions. And the first question you have to ask is, how big of a population size can the original Bitcoin work for? And the Bitcoin Lightning creator said it could work for a population size similar to San Francisco. That's about 850,000. From now on, I'm just going to use 800,000 for my number for the size that that Bitcoin originally will work for. And the reason why I'm going to use 800,000 is because there's 8 billion people in the world. And again, I'm rounding up to that number to make the math easy. So then that means we need to make Bitcoin scale to a population size 10,000 times larger than it currently can. Actually, Bitcoin Cash. And so how do you do this? And again, I told you the name of my solution. I call it Bitcoin Thunder, and all it is you separate the blockchain into bits. You don't need every node to download the entire blockchain. That's a lot of redundancy in that system. All you need to know is that the blockchain has been downloaded and has been verified. And I would also assume, and this you can even assume a lot worse than this and it won't really matter, but I assume that about 50% of the nodes are honest. And the only reason I'm going to say that is because so let's imagine a population size of 1.6 million, so that's twice as large as what Bitcoin Cash can supposedly work for right now. So you would need to, in order to use the Bitcoin Thunder network to scale Bitcoin Cash for that population size, like I said, you would separate the blockchain into parts, and you would only have users download a certain part of it. So you would have users download half of the blockchain. Well, what you would need to do then is, after they had downloaded half the blockchain, they would have to cryptographically verify between other users that, hey, have you downloaded the other part I haven't seen yet? And then the other user would have to send some sort of verification without sending the full blockchain. So you can do this cryptographically. It wouldn't be easy. Like I said, I'm not a programmer, so I don't know exactly how you do it, but even in this system where with a population size of 1.6 million, where you're only downloading half the blockchain, the community as a whole still has 800,000 blockchains. And so this goes back to why I said you need 50% honesty, because if you have 800,000 blockchains downloaded by the community as a whole, each person only has half of them downloaded, so people will be like, yeah, what if these people are dishonest somehow and they can somehow, you know, screw the network over that way? Well, you've got a lot of redundancy in this sort of system, even if there are bad actors within the nodes. And again, you might be able to code it so that there cannot be bad actors in the system like that, but I just want to be clear, even in a system like this, there's a redundancy, like a massive redundancy. And the way the math works out is it doesn't matter how large your population size gets, you will always have 800,000 blockchains downloaded by your full community. If we assume that the best or the best hardware that, you know, your average user can use can only work for a Bitcoin that scales to 800,000 people or whatever. But anyways, the good thing about separating the blockchain and the way that Bitcoin Thunder works is that it scales globally and it keeps the blockchain. Now again, this wouldn't be an easy thing to do because it does, like if you only have, you know, certain bits and pieces of the blockchain, you know, that might make it harder for transactions to occur. Again, I'm not a programmer, so I can't tell you the ins and outs of this. This wouldn't be the easiest thing to program, but if you could do this, this would be superior to Bitcoin Lightning. And so why I'm saying this, like, is if you're a developer and you could develop something like Bitcoin Thunder, you wouldn't want to release it to the Bitcoin network. What you would actually want to do is you would want to buy a bunch of Bitcoin Cash and then release it to the Bitcoin Cash network and then have the two compete, and then you'd make so much money, it'd be unbelievable. Again, I'm not a developer, I can't do this, but if someone like could, that would be awesome. Or if you could just scale Bitcoin Cash in any way that you keep the blockchain. This is just an idea. Again, there might be better ideas, there might be more efficient ideas. I don't really know, so I'm not going to, you know, try and say this is the best idea. This is just one idea, and I thought, you know, it was a good idea, so I'd get it out there in the community. But anyways, if we look at these things individually, going back to why you would want something like Bitcoin Thunder, it's because Lightning removes blockchain auditability. Again, if you use Bitcoin Lightning, you're doing all the transactions off the blockchain. So if you're doing all these transactions off the blockchain, how do you know like that they're occurring? How do you know that there's no bugs going on in the transactions? And you don't really, unless somebody, you know, brings up a complaint. So like you never are completely sure that nothing's going wrong with Bitcoin Lightning. You can't check it. So then you know, with blockchain analysis, again, without blockchain analysis, how do you know it works? That's a big question. I don't have an answer for it. Like if it brings up a lot of questions I had with Zcash, with the two-way zero knowledge of Zcash. The scenarios are different, so it's not the same question. Like if you use Bitcoin Lightning, you should still know that there's 21 million Bitcoin, but you don't know that all your transactions really necessarily worked, or that all the transactions on the network worked. You can't check that. And the other problem with Bitcoin Lightning is that it centralizes Bitcoin in that it makes it basically like a banking system, which isn't a terrible thing, but it's just not what the blockchain originally was. So it's kind of fundamentally different. But then our next point here, again, Bitcoin Lightning, Bitcoin Thunder, or Bitcoin Cash, I'm sorry. I'm mixing all my words here. Bitcoin Cash cannot use Bitcoin Lightning. So how are you going to scale it? So like I said before, the problem here with Bitcoin Cash is like you're going to have a big blockchain bloat problem because they've already increased the size of the blockchain. And that's the way you have to do it if you want to keep all the data on all the transactions on the blockchain. But how do you have a big blockchain and scale globally? And then I think this second point here, like I just didn't remove one of the points from my previous, yeah, that's the same point as my previous one. So we already talked about that. That was supposed to be in the last one when I was talking about Lightning. So just don't worry about that second point there. But so again, just to get everybody back on the right train of thought. So Bitcoin Cash must include the blockchain, and it's going to be a massive blockchain. The blockchain, because it cannot use Lightning, it's going to be, you know, way bigger. If it's used on a global scale, it's going to be like 10,000 times bigger than the Bitcoin blockchain. So that's, you know, that's a big difference. 10,000 times bigger is way bigger. You can't download that on your computer. So how do you scale, and how do you scale while avoiding blockchain bloat? So again, the questions you have to ask for this, for how to scale, is you have to look then, you have to look at the limits of Bitcoin Cash and how it scales already. So again, before the Bitcoin Cash fork, Bitcoin could scale to 800,000. So we're going to use that number here for Bitcoin Cash. The world population equals 8 billion. So how do you scale to a population size that is 10,000 times larger than what the blockchain can currently handle? That's what we're looking at. So again, this is all a blockchain bloat issue. That's the only issue involved here. And if you want to keep the blockchain, you cannot remove the blockchain bloat issue. So how do you get a blockchain that is 10,000 times larger to work without decreasing the size of the blockchain? So again, my answer for this is Bitcoin Thunder. Okay, and all that Bitcoin does is it separates the blockchain. So again, the full blockchain is unnecessary. You do not need to have access to the full blockchain to trust that it exists. If you guys have watched my video where I say the blockchain is like a river, when you test a river to see if it's polluted, you don't test all the goddamn water in the river. You test the water where you're at, and you test only a small bit of it. You take a small sample out of the river. You don't test the whole goddamn river. Okay, so with Bitcoin Thunder, it's the same idea. In order to use Bitcoin or the blockchain, you don't need to test the whole goddamn blockchain. You just need to test part of it, and then have other people test part of it, and then you can just trust their tests or whatever. You know, you need to have a network of people who have used identical tests, and you know, they can all have oversight over each other's tests, but you don't have to perform the test yourself. Okay, you just need proof that the blockchain is there and that there haven't been bugs on it. You just need somebody else to have seen it. You don't have to have seen it yourself. Okay? And that's the whole point of Bitcoin Thunder. So the users are only going to download a fraction of the blockchain. So together, on this last one I say together, hundreds of blockchains exist. So again, I said if you're going to scale Bitcoin, you can have, because they said Bitcoin scales to a population size of 800,000. So the way the math works out is you will always have 800,000 blockchains within the Bitcoin network if you keep it at that level of scaling. Now you might want it higher or lower, so you're going to have thousands to hundreds of thousands, or maybe just a few hundred blockchains that exist. It depends on what you want. You can have a maximum right now of 800,000. Okay, 800,000 is the most. You can have less if you want. Again, it would just kind of be up to the network to decide what would be best for it. But then finally, this last slide that I want to talk about again is the whole point of the Bitcoin Thunder network is because, like, the whole reason you would want to do it is because it should be completely superior to Bitcoin Lightning. If you could do the Bitcoin Thunder network by having bigger block sizes, you don't have the blockchain bloat. Like, you have the problem of the blockchain being big, but people aren't downloading the whole thing, so they don't have to worry about that. So you're not paying transaction fees for it, so you should have transaction fees that are basically zero. Now, technically speaking, the Bitcoin Lightning network, I talked about this in the Bitcoin Lightning network, or the Bitcoin Lightning video. The Bitcoin Lightning network actually increases the total fees on the network. So Bitcoin Thunder would have lower fees than Bitcoin Lightning, and it would keep the blockchain. Okay, so you could do it for 8 billion users. Again, you would have each user download 1/10,000th of the blockchain, and that doesn't seem like much, but again, that means if you divide 8 billion by 10,000, you get 800,000. So that's a lot of redundancy in that system. Like, you have enough people having the blockchain, like, totally, like, if you just put all the pieces together, you have 800,000 blockchains. That's a lot. That's a lot of redundancy. So don't think of this as like you put it into small bits and so then you're walking on this tightrope. No, not at all. You have 800,000 blockchains, so there's a ton of redundancy there. The other thing too is you can always have specialized servers that can download higher ratios of the blockchain. I'm not familiar with the capabilities of modern servers that different big IT companies like Facebook or something would use. You could check that out for yourself. I honestly have no idea, but I would assume a server would be able to download more than 1/10,000th of the blockchain. This 1/10,000th number, it just means, like, that's the if you had everyone use Bitcoin right now, that's the most they could download of the blockchain using a normal computer is 1/10,000th. So a server can do a lot more than a normal computer. Can it do 10,000 times more than a normal computer? I don't know. I have no idea. There's probably something out there that can do at least 1,000. I don't really know. So you could have different servers that would download the entire blockchain, and you could actually change the block reward to pay them slightly. But they would want to do that anyways, because then they could offer services like blockchain.info where people could check their account balances and stuff. So companies would want that. So people would pay money for servers to download higher ratios of the blockchain. But the whole point of this, again, is that if you do this with Bitcoin Cash, you keep the blockchain auditability. But anyways, I've talked about this for enough right now. Again, this is all theoretical. I'm not a programmer, so it's not something I can create. But it's just something that I would love to see. And again, I've seen the price of Bitcoin Cash just keep dropping forever. But if someone could figure this out for the Bitcoin Cash network, if they could scale it, again, whether or not it's my Bitcoin Thunder idea and it's not specifically my idea, I pieced that together from talking to a bunch of different people, but whether or not it's the Bitcoin Thunder idea or some other idea, but if you could scale a blockchain and keep the blockchain, that would be far superior to Lightning, and I would love to see it happen. So I just think it's something interesting. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. There's going to be more coming out soon.